Hey, how y'all doing? This is Mongo Slade, and today we're going to do 30 years of Chris Jericho. Essentially, we're going to do some memories because I've kind of been sitting back thinking about this whole thing about Jericho being around, and when the first time I saw him, and I think that the first time I saw him was probably in WCW, from WCW Saturday Night, when he was a perennial underneath babyface, and he seemed to wrestle a lot on that show. Also, he wrestled a lot on WCW Pro. They don't really show a lot of that material, as far as his anniversary and all that type of stuff. And I still think it's kind of weird that he spent his anniversary in AEW. But I mean, it is what it is. There's not much you can do about it. But you have this sort of this the length of Chris Jericho's career and all the different things that he's done. I didn't know until you know I came back to wrestling in 2005, 2006 that he had even been in ECW. It wasn't until One Night Stand that I realized that he had actually wrestled in ECW, because his run in ECW was really short. I forget, I think he was only there for like maybe a couple of months, maybe not even a year. And I know he was the ECW World Television Champion. I do know that. Um, there was, in from the DVD box sets or whatever, I saw, his matches with Taz, and he did a couple of matches with like Shane Douglas and stuff like that. So he had a decent run in ECW, but it wasn't a long run. Also, I remember watching Smoky Mountain Wrestling as a kid. I just don't remember seeing him on it. So, like, I definitely watched Smoky Mountain Wrestling as a youth, but I don't remember seeing Chris Jericho on it. Maybe it's because I didn't pay that much attention to the Thrill Seekers, but I do remember watching a lot of Smoky Mountain when I was a kid. But I had to be about 10 when Smoky Mountain was on TV, so it's going to be difficult for me to remember anything that has to do with that. So my memories of Chris Jericho kind of just began with him being on WCW, and his run as an underneath babyface in the cruiserweight division, and how he was just come on baby and land against the ring, the banisters, and letting people pat him down and all that type of stuff. I just always thought to myself, like, that's really weird. That's all, I always thought that, like, that was the most pandery babyface thing in the world, to sort of to lay on the barricade. But it kind of fit him, because he kind of people reacted the way that they needed to react, and it was sort of it was a unique thing because I'd never seen anybody do it before, and I don't think anybody has done it since. So it was a real interesting thing. But of course, Jericho turning heel was the best thing that ever happened to him. It's a slow burn to the heel turn too. Like in today's wrestling world, where sometimes people just seem to just flip heel, and there's really no steam behind it. It just kind of happens. Like, dudes just show up one day and they're bad guys. Jericho, they built a Jericho heel turn. They built his frustrations. They kind of built him to being a whiny crybaby type of heel, and then he just started blossoming. As far as charisma is concerned. And this is where he got to show his real talent. The real talent of Chris Jericho. Believe it or not because he's an all-around great performer. All around great. He could talk, he can wrestle, he could do street fight stuff, even though that's not his best stuff, is his street fight stuff. And he could do submissions and all this great stuff. But his real strength is his ability to elevate his opponents. Especially elevate his opponents who struggle to express themselves, and this is where I think some of his best, like, it was a Herculean effort with Dean Malenko, because Dean Malenko was so expressionless, so emotionless, so colorless, that, just Chris Jericho existing around him, being annoying, and, talking about him the way that he was talking about him, and mocking him the way that he was mocking him, and interviewing this cardboard cutout of Dean Malenko. It made Dean Demonico seem like a big hero for doing nothing but marching down to the ring with a blank face and fighting Chris Jericho, because it was like, okay, great, he doesn't have to do much of anything at that point, because Jericho did all the work. Jericho went out there and got the heat, and all Dean Malenko had to do was show up, and that's kind of how Jericho has been. When he ends up working with people who are not of his same quality, as far as personality and and character and work and all that type of stuff. Demonico could get in there in the ring and match and in some ways exceed Jericho as a worker, but he couldn't do it from a personality standpoint. And that also takes us to Jericho's work with Chris Benoit, because Chris Benoit was another one where he was like I was about to say a killer, because that's obvious, that's a little on the nose. But Jericho's work with Benoit, because Benoit's not a character guy, Benoit's a worker, but Jericho can go out there and make fun of Chris Benoit and, mess with him. And all Benoit has to do is respond aggressively, which Benoit can do. That's Benoit's best stuff, is him basically just being aggressive towards, usually charismatic baby faces or charismatic heels, and him, chopping them to death. It's hard to get around the murderer puns with Benoit, but that's really sort of the strength of Chris Jericho and his performance. It's his ability to elevate everyone else around him. Like Jericho did a really good job with Shelton Benjamin, who also struggles with being his personality. That I think Jericho is actually the one who dropped the Intercontinental title to him and had like a short feud with him. If I'm trying to remember that correctly, I believe it is. And he really kind of elevated Shelton Benjamin, made him look good. He did the same thing with John Cena. When Cena was struggling, Cena had the character and the acting and all that stuff down. He just didn't have the work, the work rate down. And Jericho was able to get in there with him and show people that he can have a good match with somebody other than Kurt Angle. Because who can't work with Kurt Angle? But Jericho got in there and showed people that Cena can work with the right opponent. But then also you have to look at it like Jericho being an all around great worker, can go in there and work with just about anybody. Like, but that's what gives you your longevity, and Jericho could do whatever he needed to do in the particular storyline, even though he kind of excelled at being a heel and elevating people. He could do it as a babyface as well. He also, it was just not that many successful stories of him doing it as a babyface, because usually when he's given the opportunity to be a babyface and put somebody over, it really just doesn't work out. Like when he did with like Fandango and stuff like that, like he was making fun of Fandango. It really didn't work, And I don't know, maybe it's just because of the character of Fandango. It also could be because of the performer of Fandango. But I think it might just be the character, because the character is very limiting and stupid, and I wish they would get rid of it. So I'm very interested in what they do for this 30th anniversary celebration they're going to have on AEW Dynamite. And I'm not thrilled about the match. Chris Jericho is going to be teaming with Jake Hager against Serpentico and Dr. Luther. I'm not thrilled about this, but I understand it, because Chris Jericho's friend is Dr. Luther, who's been in the business for 30 years or something like that. He's been posting pictures of him and Dr. Luther together in training facilities and different things like that. And I get it. I get that, two guys, both probably celebrating their 30th year in the business, are sort of going to go in there. They're both 50 and going to work out and, have this little match, which probably might be their first real match in years. And, also Jericho's going to try to help his friend get over, even though Jericho's definitely going to win, he's going to try to help his friend get over. And maybe you'll see Lance Storm show up, because Lance Storm is no longer under WWE contract. So I think that, Lance Storm will probably show up, and you may see some other people that are friends of Jericho, maybe Chavo Guerrero, Vicky Guerrero, all those people will show up, and that'll be cool. It'll be a fun night if they do it like I think they will, which is just a celebration of Chris Jericho. And, they have maybe him in the ring popping bubbly, and then you may have like a baby face or something crash it, and maybe that'd be his next real feud, is with whoever crashes his celebration, his anniversary celebration. And I really like that, because I think Jericho deserves it. I do think he's very well on the decline as a performer, but that's obvious. He's 50. There aren't that many 50-year-old performers that are like, oh yeah, he was just as good as he was 5 years ago. I mean, there's very few, almost none, So, but let me know what you guys think. Oh yeah, before I get there, one of my favorite Chris Jericho moments is actually not when Jericho won the title, because I didn't see it live. I actually had to go back and watch it because I wasn't watching wrestling when he won the title. Was him beating Juventud Guerrero for his mask. Now, a lot of people kind of skip over this when it comes to the importance of, masks in pro wrestling. Americans don't really get it. I've watched enough AAA and enough stuff like that to understand that taking somebody's mask is a big deal. Even though WCW didn't treat it like a big deal, it was probably it was a cruiserweight angle, so it wasn't like a main event angle, which it would be in a lucha promotion, like a AAA or something like that. You take somebody's mask, it's usually in the main event or something like that, or it's a high profile match, even if it's not the main event. The taking of Juvi's mask, Juvi's mask, not Juvie. Juvi's mask was not. It's kind of overlooked, and maybe because Juvi has been unmasked now longer than he was masked. I think because that some people kind of look over it. Juvi did an interview. He talked about this. He talked about losing his mask, and he basically said that he was young and didn't really understand that he didn't want to get, banned or blackballed or anything like that. I think Ray said the same thing, that WCW was willing to basically kick those guys out or blackball them if they didn't participate in, being unmasked and stuff like that. And he was just like, I was so young that I didn't really know to stand up for myself, and I really didn't think that much about it. But he does wish that it hadn't happened. And I think that sometimes that, we kind of overlook that situation, and that it was great for the Chris Jericho performance, that he was able to, as somebody who worked in Mexico, he kind of understood the significance of it. And for me, that's always been one of my favorite matches. One of my favorite feuds is his feuds with Juventud Guerrera. It's very underrated. And, even, we see Jericho do all this stuff with CM Punk, or do all this stuff with the various other main event guys that he's worked with, Cena or The Rock or Steve Austin and Kurt Angle and Benoit and Eddie Guerrero. Don't forget that he, the stuff that he did with Ray, the stuff with Ray was great too. The later year stuff with Ray, all of his stuff with Ray, in the WCW stuff and the WWE stuff. But don't forget that he had this excellent feud with Juvi as well. That, kind of embarrassed Juvi a little bit. But again, it was so long ago that, nobody really cares anymore. But like this video, share and subscribe. Talk to you guys later.